Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. It is approximately 12:02 p.m. Mountain Time, and we will begin with data management and reporting for an impact measurement program.
Thanks, Stephanie. Well, hello everyone. I'm Heather Rodemaker-Taylor with First Nations Owista. I'm excited to welcome you to the Data Management and Reporting for Impact Measurement webinar with Michael Bridge joining us again to present. As we mentioned in our webinar description, Michael's going to discuss database building, management, and reporting. You'll all have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments based on your personal experiences and professional needs throughout the presentation. And our hope is that participants are going to leave this webinar with a deeper understanding of the importance of electronic data management and knowing key considerations for choosing a data management platform, as well as a greater understanding of the database building/conversion process and the reporting process. So at the end of the webinar, participants should feel better informed about their organization's data management efforts and more confident with decision-making regarding data management and platform options moving forward. And we thought this topic would be helpful to anyone thinking about or working on developing their organization's impact measurement program. And so this webinar is the 12th webinar in a monthly series as part of the Native CDFI Capital Access Initiative some of you are participating in, which is funded by the Northwest Area Foundation. And I say this for all these webinars, but what's really great about this webinar series is that all the topics discussed focus on different ways to grow your capacity to access capital, which is a challenge that we all face. And in this case, better data makes for a more compelling case for your work and impact to funders and investors, and that's how we think it ties in. And so now to get us prepared, I'm going to let Stephanie highlight some of the GoToWebinar features. Please.
Great. If everyone could find the question and answer section of the webinar platform and just answer the question, what organization are you representing today? So we can get a feel for what participants are joining us for the webinar. I'll give just a few moments for that, for you to find that. Awesome. We have representation from the Seneca Nation, Leech Lake Financial Services, Chapiea Inc. And I will turn it back over to Heather.
Great. So I'm glad everybody figured out some of the functions on there. We just do it every time just in case we have new folks come on or just to kind of make sure everything's working. So thank you, Stephanie. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and turn the webinar over to Michael Bridge. He's the Principal Director of Development and Engagement for Sweetgrass Consulting. And since 2007, he's engaged in survey and data analysis, report writing, asset-based problem solving, ecological change assessments, participatory mapping, youth development, community beautification, eco-building, and tourism initiatives. His work's primarily been conducted in collaboration with various Lakota tribes in South Dakota, but also with farmers and ranchers here in eastern Colorado and a school district in northern Colorado. So that being said, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael Bridge, and I'm going to let you take it away, Michael.
Thank you so much, Heather and Steph. I just want to welcome everyone this midday and just say thanks to First Nations Owista Corporation for giving us the opportunity to have this webinar, part 2 of the webinar from last month on impact tracking. Thank you all so much in the audience as well for lending us your time and your ear and your feedback and questions throughout the webinar as well. That's what I look like in case anybody cares. Can we get a poll? So I couldn't look at myself for that long, so I switched slides. But I'd like to ask a poll and turn it over to Heather to get feedback on how many people in attendance today joined the previous webinar on impact tracking.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. We've just launched that poll, so we'll give folks a couple of minutes to, or not a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds to click on that.
It looks like just over half has cast their votes, so just a few more seconds for the remaining 30% to get your votes in.
20% left. All right, we closed it. Looks like 90 of the folks that participated, which was about 79%, 9% attended last month's webinar on impact tracking, and 91% did not attend last month's webinar.
Okay.
So we'll turn it back to you, Michael.
Thank you. All right, well, that's no problem. Towards the end, I'm going to tie in some elements from the last webinar, but it should still flow well for the majority of you all that didn't attend. That's no problem at all. I'm going to start with a summary of the prior webinar and then go into an overview of what we'll be talking about the next 45 minutes. All right, so during our last session, we talked about an impact measurement program, you know, what it means, what is impact, what is measurement. And the way Sweetgrass sets people up to measure their impact is through a logic model, wherein we utilize an impact goal or a mission statement, help an organization develop 3 to 5 core competencies, which are those really big picture elements such as financial education, advocacy, workforce development, things of those natures. And then outcomes that occur because of those core competencies. So if you're doing your core competencies well, financial education, workforce development, what would the outcomes be of those elements? Well, for example, an outcome of financial education would likely be bankability. Okay, but then we need indicators to indicate if bankability is actually an outcome, people becoming banked. So indicators would be increase in credit score, increase in savings account activity, things of that nature if we were to indicate an outcome of bankability. And then there's specific metrics that help us measure to what degree an indicator is occurring. So if an indicator is increased credit score, then a metric may be credit score at 6 months compared to credit score at 12 months. And after that, we went over how to develop a logic model and then create actual assessment tools, which are the forms, the surveys, the intakes, the inquiries, the pre and post tests, any type of forms that you all use. We discussed ways in which people can begin to develop their own. So moving forward now, and the next steps, because these two, as I said, go in line fairly well. After you've done those things, it'd be worthwhile looking into data management, electronic databases. We're going to go through all of this in more depth. Looking at barriers to data collection, management, and reporting, as well as techniques to address those barriers. Choosing a data management platform, what platforms are currently being used. Key considerations for choosing a platform. And then I want to charge you all to do some next steps and some work. I don't want you all to do this at home. People think you're starting to get crazy if you're trying to evaluate your entire family and all your interactions, but we'll call it work instead of homework. And after I describe next steps and work, I'll go into the process for database building and reporting, because these are some of the stuff that you perhaps could start doing as work on your own. Before I move on, I just want to ask, is there anybody having any trouble understanding me, hearing me, anything of that nature. If you could use your chat box if anybody's having any issues, please.
I'm not seeing any chats come in, Michael, but if I see any pop in, Stephanie and I will make sure to interrupt you and let you know any questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you all may recall this for the 9%, there you go, the 9% that was here last time. This visual should look familiar. An impact measurement program is composed of metrics, so identifying those core competencies, outcomes, and actual questions, assessment tools, and there's steps to create assessment tools in those forms that you use. Then there's data management, which includes priority, personnel, and platform. And then there's reporting, the analysis, reports, that telling of your story based on the data. And of course, we will be focused on data management and reporting. I will mention again, but I want to bring it up right now, the importance of priority. An impact measurement program must be prioritized. An impact measurement program must be prioritized. It must be continually discussed at weekly staff meetings, supported by administration, and folded into employee work plans and duties, or it will not work. Of course, data management is all a part of an impact measurement program. We can discuss all of these things, but if we don't operationalize them and prioritize them, it could cost a lot of resources, time, money, and effort with very little benefit. So why? Why is an impact measurement program important? This is one of the final slides that is a repeat from last month because I think it's very important. Data gathering, tracking, management, and reporting. But what data and what is data? Any of the information that you all collect, whether it be intakes from people who walk in to ask about your services, whether it be employee 90-day evaluations, whether it be applications for a particular program that your organization is offering, all of this is data and can be utilized to track impact and the changes that your organization is making over time. It can allow you to inform day-to-day, week-to-week, and annual decision-making at the employee, programmatic, and organizational levels. It can show economic, social, political, cultural, environmental change. Tracking the impact created by your organization at the internal, community, regional, and national levels, even abroad. Helping your organization to tell the story to yourself so you can feel good about what you do. I've worked with organizations before. We'll sit down and conduct a workshop, and the first thing we do is just write down all the programs and services they offer. And even that's gratifying because a lot of organizations don't stop and think about everything they do. People go home feeling bogged down and you know, hey, Saturday's here, time to rest. But a lot of people don't look at what is causing the source of your feeling run down and losing energy. It's because of the amazing amount of things that you all are accomplishing. The community, it's important to track these things for the community to bolster esteem, direction, and even to inform naysayers, people that aren't excited about what you're doing. At least they can be informed in their naysaying. Other organizations. It can help other organizations, new emerging native CDFIs, new emerging native CDCs for best practices, lessons learned, building a model. and of course for philanthropists and funders, proving to them what you already knew or framing your story in new ways. So how does data management fit into all of this? Well, I mentioned priority, personnel, and platform. If you're collecting data and you've built assessments, but it's not managed properly, it's going to cost a lot of time and resources. And as I mentioned, there may be very little positive benefits if it's not managed properly. Data management must be a priority for impact programming, and steps up to data and the steps up to data collection will be a huge dump of resources. So those steps up to data collection, building forms, collecting the data, etc. But if prioritized by administration and staff, it can be used efficiently as an asset to enhance your internal structure as well as the impacts your organization has throughout the community and abroad. Personnel, it takes time from everyone involved. It should be incorporated in people's weekly or bi-weekly work plans, if not day-to-day. This would depend, if you have an event every month or so, then you're going to only want to insert the data related to that event every month or so. If you have weekly staff reports due on Monday, it might be weekly that you input the outcomes of those meetings, the goals for the next week, things of that nature. But either way, related to personnel and the time it takes, it is a skill that needs to be created, practiced, and utilized frequently. And it will become more efficient. Okay, the platform is the place where you store your data. The place you store your data. You have your database. That's where all of your data is. And then the platform is that element that your database is stored in. Now that could be Salesforce, sticky notes that have fallen off your computer, down home, outcome tracker, Google workbooks, the back of your hand, Key, the exceptional assistant, and many more, of course. CDFIs have a toolkit that they utilize. People working with homeless communities have different programs that they use, and across the board. But the platform is where your data is stored, your database is stored. Now let's look at some electronic database management pros. Having an electronic platform, what are some of the pros of that? Organization at the personal and programmatic level. At the personal level, all your activities, actions can be tracked. At the programmatic level, you can have data from each program or service. That way, stories are being documented in outcomes. The things that your organization is doing can be tracked by program as well. It consolidates efforts. Oftentimes, people from across the room, building, region, nation, or globe can store their information in the same place. Where, as you may know, some larger native CDFIs, people in the office beside you may not know everything that you're involved in because they are so engaged in what they're involved in. This will allow you to consolidate efforts from across the room, or in some cases across the globe. Thinking of, for example, Habitat for Humanity. This is opposed to Rachel having data in her desk and Wichapi having data on the smartphone and Ty having data in an Excel spreadsheet that has been renamed twice and can't find. But he knows he emailed that data to Susan last week, but he can't find that in the inbox. We know these stories. I experienced these myself. But this will allow us to consolidate efforts for quick access, for real-time access. Everything is literally at your fingertips, including the ability to answer people over the phone when they ask questions, so automated reporting. Someone calls your organization and asks the question, hey, I'm just wondering, what are you all really doing? I've heard that you have provided this many loans to our community, but what's really happening? At the quick click of a few buttons, you would be able to have some real-time answers to that person over the phone. It won't start out as a quick click of a couple buttons, but working up to that point, I promise you, you can get to that level of efficiency. With this quick access, of course, there's also greater ease of data sharing, in-depth analysis as well, all of which, quicker in-depth data analysis, all of which leads to efficiency and thus an effective time of your valuable resources assets to the communities you serve. Now, these are all some pros that I mentioned, but there, of course, are barriers as well. I originally titled this Barriers to Data Management, but after I thought about it, these are barriers that we face in a lot of areas. Data collection, data management, where do you come from? Reporting, softball, playing Angry Birds, this guy. Parenting, being a phenomenal date. All of these things are not only barriers to data management, but barriers to other elements in our lives. Time, money, capacity, knowledge, internet access, and back data from prior data platforms. That might not be one that's a barrier to I don't know, softball or Angry Birds, but the majority of these are barriers to many things in our lives, as well as to data management, and shortly I'll go into these more in depth, how they are directly a barrier to data management and utilizing a data platform. Another barrier, though, I've got to say, you start digging into data management and data analysis, things of that nature, if you don't already. Some of you on the phone do, on the webinar, do this already, and I know who some of you are, so it's okay. But another barrier is you're going to start to see the world in this way. I was even creating this PowerPoint, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this kind of looks like a chart. So then I started charting it out. Let's see, time has 4 letters. What is it? Money has 5 letters. Capacity has 8. Knowledge has 9. You can even turn it into percentages, right? This can be a barrier where people, you'll notice a couple months into this, somebody's just going to say, what are you even talking about? But how do we mitigate these barriers of time, money, capacity, knowledge, internet access, back data? Set a schedule for your time. I know some people that once a month, once every 2 months. Some people do it, they schedule 5 minutes after a coaching session or a one-on-one to insert data. Just nip it in the bud, get it over with. As far as the money, you can change the way you think about an investment like a data management platform. Some of them are expensive. But as you're paying, here's an example. Look at the investment in terms of labor hours saved, and in the future, hours saved from paying contracting consultants to manage your data. So even if your electronic data management system costs $4,000 annually, some of them do, and some even more, make sure you subtract the staff hours it takes to find and consolidate data, and also the monetary value of missed opportunities from not receiving a funding source because you didn't have the data or lost the data to back your claim. Then you can subtract the monetary value of having contracting consultants do it for you. If you have limited funds to begin at all, I know some folks who are using Google Forms, and a lot of people use Excel spreadsheets. People think that you have to go big, and that's not true. So think about the ways, start small, and also think about where that money is really going to and how affording a data management platform can save money in other areas, such as staff hours. Capacity. It'll take continual training, technical skills, and there'll be people, generalists, who can insert data here and there. But then there will be people that are specialists. A lot of the native CDFIs we work for has that one person who is incredible at utilizing the data platform. Knowledge. The game continually changes, and you got to keep up with technologies. Of course, internet access is critical, and if you have horrible issues with maintaining internet access, you might want to consider something like Excel. Then there's the back data from prior data platforms. You decide to go electronic, but then you've got to decide, okay, how much of these paper forms from the last 2 decades do I want to digitize? We've had some people utilize interns, volunteers, for example, Vista workers, to help them with this process, to start inserting their paper copies into an electronic platform. Generally, building a data management platform takes 1 to 2 years. It could take 6 months for small organizations, especially if they were going to do something fairly simple, not too complex. As I mentioned, don't always think you need to go big. Excel, I know plenty of organizations that utilize something such as Excel. Just be practical with what you plan to collect, especially as you're just getting started. Before we go to the next slide, I'd like to ask another question. I'll turn it over to Heather for another question.
Okay, so the next slide poll we have here is, since the last impact tracking webinar, so for those of you that attended that webinar, did you create metrics and or assessments specific to your organization? Or if you didn't attend the last webinar, but maybe you've just been doing this in general, feel free to jump in on this poll too. So we'll give you all a couple of seconds here.
We'll give just a few more seconds for any last votes.
All right. We have about 63% of y'all voted, so nobody said yeah, both, but we did have 10% of you that participated say yes, metrics, 10% said yes, assessments, and 80% said no, but our organization plans to enhance our impact tracking. And we didn't have anybody vote on no, and I intentionally forgot about it as soon as possible, which is good to see. So I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Hey, Heather, could we run the next poll as well, the My Organization Currently?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm launching that now. My Organization Currently, please select one. Doesn't use an e-platform. We keep files in a cabinet. Uses one electronic platform, uses 2 electronic platforms, or uses 3 or more electronic platforms. And we'll give you all a couple of seconds. All right, we have about 75% of y'all have voted. And we're going to go ahead and close that. So nobody said they don't use an electronic platform. They keep files in a cabinet. 42% said that you use one electronic platform, 33% said you use two electronic platforms, and 25% of you that responded said you use 3 or more electronic platforms.
Wow. Okay. Thank you all. The first response to that question was actually not a joke. I know some folks who are just now transitioning to even start to use Excel and things of that nature, native CDFIs. Maybe it's a native CDC, sorry. Yeah, that wasn't a joke or anything. I was asking that seriously. What platforms do people use? I'm imagining some of the ones on the screen, but perhaps others as well. Could people use their chat function and chime in, letting us know what types of platforms you're currently using?
We'll give you all a couple of seconds, and we'll let you know as they come in, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm seeing a couple. I see Down Home in Excel. That's what Craig said from Seneca Nation. I see PeopleSoft. Donald Miller put that one in. I'm actually not familiar with that one. And then Uriah.
You read that one?
Yeah, it said PeopleSoft.
Okay.
And then I see Down Home Solutions from Uriah and Full Court and Access from Lietta Anderson.
Cool.
And Down Home from Rob Aitken. So we got a good range.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good range. I'm going to look up that PeopleSoft as well. I'm not familiar with that either. Key considerations for data management platforms, there's internal considerations, but there's also the actual database, the platform itself considerations. And as you know, some of you utilizing 2 or more platforms, that is something to consider as well. We'll discuss on the next slide. Internally, you want to ask yourself, what do you want your software to be able to do? What is your staff capacity to utilize a software program? What are your budget, time, and internet limitations as resources? As far as the data platform is concerned, configuration and import fees. Import fees is that, say you've been using a database for quite some time or haven't been using, you've used a different electronic database. Oftentimes they can work with you to transport that data into another database. Some of them speak very well together, different companies, and some do not, but it generally costs a fee to transfer that data. Annual subscriptions, anywhere from $20,000 to free. Customization and processing. So I believe it's Down Home. Oh, and the other one just slipped my mind. I'll get to it though. They offer minimal customization, but then there's others such as Salesforce that you can customize a lot of reports. Then there's client portals where your clients may need access to certain elements, and then the ease of creating your own queries and reports, and we will definitely get more into that. Please, anyone, if I'm moving along and you have a question, feel free to ask at any time through your chat box there. Okay, choosing a data management platform. These are still considerations. As you're considering, you want to think a two-pronged approach. And I'm sure this is why some of you are using 2 or more. There really is no system that accounts for loan tracking and impact tracking all in one efficiently. Loan tracking is the processing in portfolio. That would be, for example, the Exceptional Assistant and Down Home. Then there's the impacts tracking, tracking your impact, what your organization is doing for the community. for elements like that, you have Outcome Tracker, Salesforce, T. T and Downhome both track impacts, but are, for the most part, very cookie cutter, and they're only marginally customizable. That's what I was mentioning in the last slide. I tend to think that the reason that programs are this way right now, there may be many reasons, but I tend to think it's because the programs haven't yet quite caught up with the times, but I believe that that's coming. You know, at one time, these elements, CDFIs, native CDFIs, they were pushed for economic development and from outside entities, you know, pushed to be economically focused, dollar sign focused. It's only been recently that even funders and larger organizations have said, what about the real impact? I mean, the people on the ground, the community members, native CDFIs themselves have known it's always been about the impact, but it's only been around the last decade and sooner that organizations and funders have even said, hey, I want to know about the health and well-being of your community. I want to know how much more time parents are spending with their children because of the programs that we and services we've offered them, things of that nature. So that's becoming very much important, highlighted even by those larger outside entities. And I think one day that programs will incorporate both loan tracking and impact tracking very well. For those of you all who are not quite satisfied with your impact tracking program, I would imagine you've heard of this, and if not, I want to bring it up, the Opportunity Through Impact System, OTIS, which is being currently prepared by OISTA. They utilize Outcome Tracker, which does not do loan processing, as we mentioned, but it couples well with Downhome, which does do loan processing. So OTIS would couple very well with Downhome for loan processing, yet it will help you track your impact as an organization. Let me talk about OTIS briefly. The Opportunity Through Impact System. I'm reading from the left here. The OTIS system consists of templates of forms and systems, including queries and reports, which do not have any data in them. Each CDFI would then get a copy of those templates, those reports and queries. Each CDFI then is able to track their own their data in the system. Each CDFI will have standardized reports which utilizes data from their system. And then each native CDFI from across the U.S. will then get reports back, aggregate reports from all the entities that are taking part in the OTIS system. So this is a system built in Outcome Tracker with a VistaShare platform that native CDFIs can use to track their impact. And in return, they will get aggregate reports from all the native CDFIs that are using this system. This might be something that you all want to take a look at. Sweetgrass has been very involved in working with OISTA. OISTA has utilized a lot of efforts, resources, feedback, piloting the program, and this should be available sometime next spring. If there's any questions, you can utilize your chat or contact OISTA for further details. Now, here's a table we've created in the past year to kind of demonstrate other platforms. I'm not going to focus on this a lot, but I wanted to include it in the PowerPoint so you all can refer back to it once you get a copy after this webinar. It's not all-inclusive, but it has some of the more popular electronic platforms, electronic database platforms, and lets you know some of their strengths, their weaknesses, what they're best for, their estimated vendor configuration fee, estimated recurring subscription. You know, you have anywhere from $240 a month for 6 users for Outcome Tracker, or you have 10 free licenses for a 501c3 nonprofit through Salesforce, and all the way down the line. You can utilize this as a resource when you're trying to consider other data management options, or just seeing how the one you currently use compares. Before we move forward and talk about the data platform process, I'd like to get some feedback on what is working well and what is working not so well with your current database platform. If something's working well and you really want to share it, share that. If something's really frustrating you with your platform, share that as well.
We'll just give folks a couple of seconds, and we'll let you know as they come in, Michael.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, Michael. Oh, I just saw something come in. Uriah shared that limitations in down home and having to export Excel, making it double work.
Okay. I do know some of those limitations down home, they do have that ability to be customizable, as I mentioned, but to track any type of impact your organization would like is not feasible in down home or T. It's not customizable to that point. That may perhaps be some of the issue. A lot of them require you to download, whether it be in Excel, or some of them allow you to download right into another, like SPSS or something, another statistical software. But that is probably, if that's a limitation for down home, that would be considered a limitation for many of them, that downloading the data in Excel. So the data platform process. So you decide on a platform, then what? Well, these first three elements, harvesting your data, seeing what all you collect, figuring out what you don't collect, and creating assessment tools. We discussed that on the first webinar. Then the building forms and activities in a database system. We began to discuss that, but that's where I'll kick it off after I explain this slide. We'll start with the building forms and activities in the database system. There's that importing and entering existing data, which can take quite a while. You know, just to insert data from January 1st, 2016, it's taken some organizations up to 10 months now, and, you know, scattered, putting time in throughout. And some organizations were able to do that in a day or two, insert back data from January 1st, 2016 with the data build we've been working on. Training staff and clients. That's an ongoing process. Continual collaboration to create the impact tracking program to begin with. So that's training throughout, you know, that continual collaboration. That would include in-person, over the web, email, and telephone communications. In-depth personal trainings for database management, how to use it, how to insert data, how to access data, how to build new forms and activities. And then technical assistant phone calls and possible one-on-ones for a year or more, you know, after it's built. Building standardized reports, such as, for example, membership. You could build a report on membership where you could continually, at the click of several buttons, upload your annual membership numbers, past dues, total collected in membership, things of that nature. Profit and loss statements, health and well-being statements, and a report bankability, which I'll demonstrate shortly. There's also that reverse engineering once of forms, meaning you have paper forms, you get them in an electronic platform and realize it doesn't jive so well. I need to change around some of the questions and the wording because it just doesn't quite jive with the platform, and you decide you need to go back and start changing some of your paper forms, the format and the structure, things of that nature. All right, to talk about these last 4 through 9, I'm going to start with our example from last webinar, looking at our logic model, which is the programs and services of your CDFI, a particular goal of your CDFI, core competencies, those outcomes such as bankability, these indicators which indicate that the outcomes are occurring, credit score increase, loan increase, decrease in unemployment, and then the metrics. And then if you all recall, or if you all have seen a logic model before, this is what a model would look similar to for an organization. You have your programs and services on your left, followed by your core competencies, education, financing, workforce development, the outcomes that will occur due to those core competencies, bankability, lending, job creation. This is just an expanded version of what I just showed you from the previous slide. And then there's indicators to indicate to what extent the outcomes are being achieved. Well, increased credit scores, for example, would let you know, help you understand if bankability is occurring. So we'll take this example and we're going to show you how to build the database and how reporting can be used efficiently. I have some generalized examples. But I'm going to call this next steps and work before we move forward, because these are things that hopefully you can get started on after the webinar. Consider your organization's platforms. Does it meet your needs? Do they meet your needs? If not, consider new ones. And if they do meet your needs, try adding reports and custom reports if you have that availability. Try using elements of the platforms that you have not yet been used by your organization. So not only queries and reports, but other elements that could be useful for your organization that you have not yet tried to use. We all use programs that I think we probably only know about 20% of the programs we use. I just made that number up, but that's how I feel when I'm in Excel. So here's an example now. I'm going to use this example of bankability about midway through your screen and showing some of these indicators: credit score increase, loan increase. So you've completed a data harvest. That means you have listed all of your forms in a database. I'm using Excel here. That doesn't mean you have to. All of your forms. I made up some forms. Credit Growth Program Mid-Year Review Form, the Credit Growth Program Exit Form, the Home Loan Application Form. These are the questions that are on those forms. What is your credit score? Do you have a savings account? How much money is in your savings? All right, these are the metrics, the things that those questions are getting at. Your credit score changed at 6 months. So if you're trying to measure bankability by increased credit score, it would be good to know what the credit score change at 6 months was compared to, say, midway down this red box, the credit score change at 12 months. So you could utilize what is your credit score from your credit growth program mid-review, so that'll be at 6 months, and then a little ways down, what is your credit score from your credit growth program exit form to see that credit score change at 12 months. Across the top here, you would have all of your outcomes and their indicators. So you have bankability at column E, and the indicators that prove bankability would be that increased credit score, increased financial responsibility, increased participation with savings accounts. After that, you see lending, which would be, the indicators would be an increase in loans, a decrease in denials of loan applications, things of that nature. So let's say you want to report on participation with savings accounts. Well, with this data harvest, we indicate if you decide you want to report on increased participation with savings accounts, these X's indicate that you could go right to your mid-year review and pull out the question, do you have a savings account? How much money is in your savings account? Do you use a percentage of your monthly budget? If so, what percent? That should have had an X there as well. All the way down at the bottom, do you have a savings account, which was asked again in the home loan application? So you could create a report just by pulling all of these questions. If you have an electronic database, that gets made very easily. You could also create a report based on financial responsibility. And I'm going to show you how this all works. Or altogether, you could just create a report based that discusses bankability, where you could discuss credit score increase in financial responsibility, increased participation with the savings account. And if you have this, this data harvest base built, you know exactly what questions you can pull from what forms to create that report. So this is actually building a report. Some of you all are skilled at this, and I'm just going to guess that some of you are not. But electronic platforms that allow you to run queries and reports will have something that looks similar to this. On your left, we'll call this the bankability report. You're going to create this for an example. On the left, we'll have all the questions in your entire electronic database. And you're going to say, well, if I want to, at the click of a button, be able to know numbers related to my bankability, I need to get the questions that belong over here to the right. So you're going to pull what questions you want out of all the questions that you ask throughout your entire programs, and you want to move them over here to the right. Once again, this is just a general example, but electronic platforms give you this option, ones that are create customizable reports. So you notice, what is your first name, what is your last name, what is your home address, is still over here on the left, because that is not something we need to utilize in order to prove bankability. So you have just built a report called bankability that will highlight the answers from all of these, allow you to quickly highlight the answers to all of these questions in order to report on the status of your bankability. Connecting these questions is called, that is the query, bringing these connections over. But then solidifying it and naming it, that is the actual report. And once you do this, and you click a couple of buttons, you will end up with something like this. This is the answer to all of those bankability questions. Do you have a savings account? And this would have been at that 6 month, because remember you pulled it from different forms. The credit growth program at 6 months and the credit growth program at 12 months, or at the home application program. So you can see early on in the game there were certain people that did not have a savings account. But at the end of the program, everyone had a savings account. You can also see, for example, that at 6 months, people identified their credit score. And then you can see at 12 months, at the end of the program, a lot of people's credit score increased by 20 points. Now you can get even more specific here. A report, that bankability report will be in your system until you delete it. So you can go back to that bankability report anytime that you want and click a specific date, and it'll pull up the information for that date. So there'll be easy cross comparisons. Well, I just showed you a generalized example that I made up. This is what it looks like in an electronic format. This is from Salesforce, wherein all your questions are over to the left. They've been dragged over. You see it says drag and drop to add fields to the report. They've been dragged over to the right, and then all your data would show up where it says it would show up right there. Now, that was a lot of information and a little less hands-on than I myself appreciate, but it's very difficult to discuss all of this as far as data management. It's very difficult to do a hands-on webinar related to that. So I hope that thus far you've learned something that was useful. I would appreciate and expect and respect your feedback. But in moving forward for you, I want you to think of these 3 questions we were going to poll. If we don't have time for a poll, that's understandable, and if we do, we can poll these questions. But if not, please think about these 3. Do you feel your organization is using the appropriate platforms? Do you feel able to make more informed decisions regarding database building and electronic platforms? And will your organization make changes in regards to their platforms, the platforms it uses in the next year? Hey Heather, we're going to chime in.
Yeah, we've launched the first poll, and we'll go ahead and do. I mean, I know we're getting close on time, so obviously, if you have to drop off, we understand. But yeah, since I know we're getting to the end, we might as well run them. So we've run the first one, and we have 60% voted. So we're going to go ahead and close that one. So do you feel your organization is using appropriate platforms? So we had 22% say yes, 22% say no, and 56% say not sure. And then we're going to launch the next poll now.
Sorry there, Heather. I wasn't rushing on my behalf. I'm fine. I have all day.
Oh, no worries. Next poll is, do you feel able to make more informed decisions regarding database building and electronic platforms? So I'll give you all a couple of seconds to answer yes or no. And we have about 13% of y'all voting so far. 27%, about a third of you now. Give you just a couple more seconds. All right, we're going to close that. About half of y'all voted, and 100% said yes, so that's good to see. And then we're going to launch this last poll now. And that is, will your organization make changes in regards to the platforms it uses in the next year or 2? And you can say yes, no, we would like to, but it depends on 1 or more factors, or not sure. So I'll give you all a couple more seconds on that, and I'm seeing the votes come in now. we're going to close that one. About half of y'all participated in that poll, and we had 13% of you say yes. Nobody said no. 50% of y'all said we'd like to, but it depends on one or more factors, and 38% of y'all said not sure.
Great. Okay. Does anybody have questions or comments, concerns, particularly the folks that aren't using the appropriate platform? Maybe what are some concerns you have or questions? And even if we're running out of time, it's not something I would be delighted to get back with you or OESTA or however it works out with a response to that question. But feel free to ask any questions or comments related to your platforms, your ideas of considering other platforms, things of that nature.
All right, and we'll let you know as the comments come in. We have a couple so far. Sierra said, oh, sorry, that was one of the last ones. Rob said, can we receive a copy of the PowerPoint to reference? Absolutely. Following the webinar, we're going to send copies of the PowerPoint to everybody and a recording of this too, so you'll be able to revisit all the information. And I'm not seeing any other comments or questions come in, Michael.
Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you all, and I'm gonna turn it over and just say I appreciated your time, and I really appreciate OESTA and everything that they're doing for folks across the nation, and for them giving us this opportunity. So I'll turn it over to Heather and Steph, and hopefully I'll see you all one day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. That was a great webinar, and thank you for doing another presentation for us. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. And I want to thank everybody, too, for participating in this webinar and your time and participation. I hope we provided information that's going to be useful to you to develop or strengthen your own impact measurement program. And like always, I want to make sure and point out that a very brief survey should pop up when you close the webinar. It's super short. Please fill it out. It helps us track this webinar series and make sure we always continue to improve. And also, I just want to let everybody know that next month's webinar is going to take place Tuesday, November 1st at noon Mountain Time. And we're going to be discussing the Indian Loan Guarantee Program with Joanna Donahoe from Seven Sisters. And we'll be sending out more information soon on that. So that being said, have a wonderful rest of your day.